Welcome back to the college football edition of the No Huddle podcast. Today we're going to be talking about Week 12, some of the games and noteworthy events that we saw, previewing a bit of Week 13, and just analyzing what was another great week of college football. So we saw 7 ranked teams fall this past week. We saw Alabama, Louisville, Texas, Pitt, Iowa, USC, Cincinnati, and USF. All of those teams lost this week. We saw a couple ranked v ranked matchups. We saw a couple conference title races kind of get turned on their head. We saw a little twist in the ACC and a major twist in the AAC with USF falling. And there was a couple. The first thing I'm going to talk about is the college football playoff rankings. There was a couple of interesting things. Missouri, don't know why they're here, and don't really know why Tennessee here is either. They don't really have any big wins. They both have 3 losses. I'm convinced that they're just put there to give other SEC teams like a conference win so they can boost their own resume. Like Oklahoma now, after a big win, is going to play another ranked team. They shouldn't be ranked at all. So I'm not quite sure why this happened. But I digress. I don't understand Oregon being 7th. There are a couple teams that have way better resumes than them. BYU is better than them. I think teams like Utah, Georgia Tech are better than them. I know Utah has 2 losses, but these other teams have decent wins, and Oregon has none of that. They've only beaten 2 teams above 500. So I don't really see a place where Oregon is ranked number 7. And Arizona State, they squeaked in to 25. I don't know how they're ranked ahead of JMU. Arizona State hasn't done so much that's impressed me. They have a couple of bad losses. They have a few decent wins, but JMU's 9-1, going to win the Sun Belt and should take the group of 5 spot, but we'll see. Well, I guess Tulane still has to do that. They're 8-2, ranked 23. So a couple of interesting twists in the college football playoff rankings. We'll obviously see how Oregon holds up this week against USC and what's probably the best game on the slate. But anyway, we're going to talk about some of the major games this weekend. And the first one we're going to talk about is Oklahoma, Alabama. And the entire season, I've kind of said that Oklahoma is kind of screwed because they have to face Alabama. And I was super high on Alabama, and I thought that Alabama was going to be this elite team, front runner for the national championship, a shoo-in for the SEC. I'll be the first one to put my hand up and say I got this one wrong because they did not look good. They had plenty of mistakes that they made, very uncharacteristic. It seemed like self-inflicted wounds, and Oklahoma was actually very timely. I wouldn't even say Oklahoma shut me up, and we'll give them credit because their defense did play a good game. But I think Alabama shut me up more. They did not play a crisp Alabama-like game, and it's the first time at home under DeBoer where we've really seen them play like sloppy football. So many self-inflicted wounds. They had 2 turnovers that led directly to Oklahoma touchdowns. We had a pick 6 thrown by Ty Simpson and a fumble by Simpson. Sorry, not the fumble. The fumble was later in the game. So there were 3 turnovers. 2 of them led to touchdowns. Ryan Williams' muffed punt was the other one that led to an Oklahoma touchdown. They scored on the drive ensuing because they had the ball deep in Alabama territory. They also had a field goal blocked at the end of halftime from 36 yards, and when we look at the final score, that would have won them the game. These things are completely inexcusable. It's sloppy. You can't do that in the playoffs. You're not going to have no room for error. Think about a team like, I know Alabama beat Georgia, but Georgia looks phenomenal right now. If you play Georgia and you have 3 turnovers and a blocked field goal from 36 yards, you're not winning a game. It's not possible. I don't see a route for them to win a national championship unless they get super hot in the first round of the playoffs. And I don't really know what to think of this. Like, they're still going to be in the playoffs unless, actually, we'll talk about that in a minute. I don't know. But right now they still are comfortably in the playoffs. But they don't look like a top caliber team anymore. Oklahoma, they're going to be in the playoffs too, barring a loss to Missouri or LSU. I don't think of them as a top caliber team either. I think that they didn't play particularly well. The defense was okay. They did still let up 21 points against a weak Alabama team, or not a weak Alabama team, but a weak showing from Alabama. I don't feel confident in them. I don't feel confident in John Mateer. John Mateer did not look anything special. Nothing like we saw from the first 5 weeks. His injury is still getting in the way here. I don't see a path for them to score a lot of points on elite defenses. looks like they're going to host Notre Dame. As the current playoff stands, I think Notre Dame was going to run all over them. Jeremiah Love's going to go off. That defense is going to hold strong against Pitt. I don't see Oklahoma winning or beating Notre Dame, and I don't see them going far in the playoffs. They're obviously now comfortably in the playoffs, and you can't argue that. They have quality wins. They only have 2 losses against Texas and Ole Miss. So they obviously have a good resume, but they're not that good of a team. And yeah, I can't really see them going far. It's annoying because they're going to take a spot away from a team that could have been a lot more fun. Like BYU now probably doesn't have a path in. Vanderbilt, Miami, USC. Well, unless USC wins, then they'll have a path in. But Miami doesn't really have a path in, and they kind of took away a spot. With Alabama, though, like I said before, I said that they're still in the playoffs, and they should be for now. But I think this team is screwed, absolutely screwed for when they play Auburn. The reason I say that is now we know that it's a scheduled night game, so the game's going to kick off at 7:30. The last 2 times they've gone to Jordan-Hare, they've either won in quadruple overtime or won on the 4th and 31 from that iconic throw from Jalen Miller to Isaiah Bond. I don't see them winning. Auburn looks like a scrappy team. We saw them play Vanderbilt extremely tough. And I think they would love nothing more to completely screw over their biggest rivals' chances of making the playoffs. I don't feel confident about this game at all. I think it's a total trap game. Bama fans are going to overlook it. The players are going to overlook it. And I am going to say now, barring some crazy injuries or in this next week, I'm going to take Auburn to win that game. I really, really don't like crazy things happen at Jordan-Hare, especially at night. And under DJ Durkin, they look like a rejuvenated team, and I see Auburn getting a massive, massive win in 2 weeks. It's crazy as I'm saying, because I was so high on Alabama to begin with. I had them like the entire time, the first few episodes of this, week 7, week 8, I'm like, yeah, they're my national championship pick. I can't see it anymore. I really can't. You can't do that at home. Oklahoma wasn't great. Like, it was a really, really disappointing game, and it was really unfortunate because they do have the talent. I think Simpson proved that he's not quite NFL ready. He should wait another year. But I can't really see them going far. I can't really see either one of these teams competing for a championship. They both look like first-round outs at this point, especially if Bama looks like they're going to have to play at Ole Miss, which I think is what they're scheduled to do right now, if I'm not mistaken. Or maybe Texas Tech. I think they could beat Texas Tech. But I just can't see them going far. And Oklahoma, I don't like I said before, I don't think they're a really contender. I think they're going to make the playoffs. The only thing we can hope for is Missouri beating them. Then both those teams have 3 losses and they're both out. But I just can't see it happening. And then there's LSU. LSU looks like kind of a mess right now. I don't think LSU is going to beat Oklahoma at all. Oklahoma should take care of them very handedly. But very interesting game, altering the college football playoff landscape. Both teams now are playing for their lives. Well, Oklahoma was doing that to begin with. But now Alabama has, I think they have like Mercer this week. This week is actually a very funny week in the SEC. It seems like all of them have scheduled terrible FCS opponents. It's a tradition at this point in mid-November that all of the SEC will schedule these garbage-ass teams before they play in the rivalry week. I think it's funny. I mean, like, you see these teams that they're playing. Besides, I think Vanderbilt, Kentucky is one of the only, and Missouri, Oklahoma are some of the only decent games. But it's funny that these teams are scheduled like the Citadel and Mercer in the middle of November. But one can only hope that we'll have more twists and turns. We'll see how LSU. I keep saying LSU. Mizzou and Oklahoma battle it out this week in Norman. Another extremely exciting SEC game. Not extremely exciting, but a huge noteworthy game, we'll say at least, is Georgia and Texas. And both these teams faced off in Athens at 7:30 on Saturday. And the score was 35-10. The game did not feel 35-10. At the end of the third quarter, the score was 14-10 Georgia. And that speaks to how Texas stayed in the game. It speaks to how Georgia pulled away at the end. Texas can't close a game, clearly. It's funny enough because we've seen them be a huge fourth quarter team in a lot of these games, especially against Mississippi State. Maybe not the Vanderbilt game. They got outscored 21-0. But Texas really stayed in there, and it didn't look like a very poor effort until the onside kick. Gunnar Stockton had a phenomenal game. He had 5 total touchdowns. He had 4 through the air and 1 on the ground. He looks like a true, like an NFL-ready quarterback. I'm still going to stick to what I said a few weeks ago. If he waits another year, doesn't enter the draft, he'll be the number 1 pick next year. Without a doubt, him and Simpson will be battling it out, and it'll be a great, exciting QB battle because we haven't had that many great quarterbacks this year besides Mendoza. But I think that's going to be a really, really promising NFL talent coming out of Athens. He also didn't really have a favorite receiver. He had 6 receivers, all with 20 yards, and none more than 60 yards. So Gunnar Stockton knows how to spread the ball, and Georgia knows how to breed athletes that can catch the ball. So it's a bit of a balance with both. I think he had around 250 yards, but still 4 touchdowns. Incredible day. I think he did have 1 pick, though. Arch on the other side of the ball, the other quarterback, I don't think he was that bad, to be honest. It seemed like he wasn't really comfortable. The Georgia defense really rushed him. The play calling was god-awful. It looks like they're trying to kill him. I don't know what's going on with that Texas play calling, but there was at one point in the game, it was 3rd and 14, and this is when the game was still close, and they ran a QB draw, and he got popped. What are we doing with that? Come on. It's not a throwaway down. 3rd and 14, it's not likely, but it's still manageable, and you completely throw it away, and you're getting your most prized possession absolutely pummeled. Come on. Bring out the Randy Moss. Come on, man. What are we doing? It's just, it's so frustrating because he does show glimpses of talent. In the first 2 quarters, he led a lot of promising drives. One ended up with an unfortunate pick. Should have been pass interference. It really wasn't a question. But then in the beginning of the 3rd quarter, when he leads the drive to score the touchdown, the only one they scored, he looked really good. And I think there are signs of him growing as a potential prospect. Obviously not this year. Once again, we're going to push it back next year because he made it clear that he was going to stay, but also he's just not NFL ready yet. So really frustrating to see that happen from the Texas room. But I think he's showing signs of promise, especially after that Ohio State disaster in week 1. He threw a couple bad picks, didn't really look comfortable. But I swear to God, the O-line was playing against them. That O-line was buns. And there were a couple of really interesting stats from the first half with Texas. Texas was 0 for 6 in the first half on 3rd down. You're not going to win a game, especially when your defense is keeping you in it. And you have a couple of promising drives. You can't win games. You can't score points if you don't pick up any 3rd downs. It's not a good formula. And it really sucks because they do show promise. The defense did keep them in the game for a while, and the offense just didn't show any signs of being competitive. But for every prop that I'm going to give Texas, and I know I'm giving them probably more credit than what's due, but Georgia deserves 10 times more. The offense looks super efficient. That red zone offense looks incredible. The defense looks punishing. I barely saw any missed tackles. There were a couple of busted coverages, but they seemed like they bounced back pretty quickly. The defensive line, as always with Georgia, are friggin' dogs. They're dogs, literally and figuratively. They look like animals. They didn't give Arch any time. They always looked rushed. There were a couple of blocking assignments with a running back. I forget his name, but they just made him look super uncomfortable, and they just completely outworked the Texas offense. But this game really took a turn on its head when it became 21-10. Not because of the touchdown, because of what happened after. And Georgia lined up for, obviously, kickoff. They went with an onside kick. And even it seemed like Sark and the Texas special teams kind of prepped for it. They had a lot of people on the 45-yard line. And somehow, Georgia still executes a flawless onside kick. And I think, even if Texas planned for it, the way that Georgia executed it, just hats off to them. Hats off to Kirby. That was a really, really gutsy decision. I didn't think he would have the guts to do that because it didn't seem necessary. They were up 2 scores and were kind of controlling the tempo of the game. But props to him. And it honestly feels like Steve Sarkisian cannot do anything to beat Georgia. He will always get outcoached, outclassed, outworked by this Georgia team. It's 3 times in 2 years that we've seen Georgia beat Texas. 2 last year, with one being in the SEC championship, and now we see the 3rd one here. I don't think they can do anything about it. it's just like kryptonite. Sark can work his ass off. He can coach a team, but he can't beat Georgia, and I don't think he'll be able to for a while. I don't think they'll play each other because of the rotation scheduling. But maybe we'll see them in the playoffs or an SEC championship sometime soon. I don't think Sark can do it. It just seems like Kirby has his number. Everything Sark does, Kirby just preps 10 times more. So I don't really think it's on Sark. I just think, like, in the same way that Alabama owns Georgia, we're going to see Kirby owning Sark for a really long time in the future. It's going to be a fun rivalry, but it looks pretty one-sided for now. The implications of this game are pretty severe for Texas. They're out of the playoffs. Even if they beat A&M, they play Arkansas this week, so that should be a free win. Even if they beat A&M, they'll still have 3 losses. A&M will have 1. There will be a couple teams with 2 losses. They're going to need a lot of help elsewhere. They have to hope that Vanderbilt loses to Tennessee so they can have a head-to-head tiebreaker, because Vanderbilt's 8-2, while now Texas 7-3. So that's gonna be interesting to see how that plays out. But Texas, it's a disappointing season after a great playoff run last year. I know they got a little bit of luck with the draw and lucky in that game against Arizona State. But they did make it to the semifinals and were 1 yard away from tying it up with Ohio State with 2 minutes to go or whatever it was. So I think that it's definitely a regression. It doesn't feel as bad. Granted, they did lose to Florida. Florida's 3-7. Now we kind of talked about earlier, like, oh, it's like kind of an okay loss. Like, it's whatever. Like, playing at the Swamp is hard. Not this year. We've seen that Florida's a train wreck, and it's going to be a horrible loss, and it's going to prevent them from playing for a shot at the playoffs. If they were 8-2 right now instead of 7-3, they could beat A&M and be with like a top 8 team. They could even host a game. But they're not anymore. And it's kind of disappointing to see how it played out. But that's how it works. You want to schedule these hard games, you got to win them. Props to them for scheduling Ohio State. That's not an easy game at all, but you got to win these games if you want a chance to compete for a championship. They didn't do that, and tough luck. They're probably going to be in the Raleigh Quest Bowl now. It's funny how that's the best bowl for an SEC team. We saw Alabama lose to Michigan in there last year after they missed the playoffs. We're going to see them there now. For Georgia, they've solidified themselves as a college football, like they're going to, as a team in the college football playoffs. They should have a bye. Right now they're ranked number 4. I think that's perfectly accurate. And they play Charlotte this week, and that's obviously if they're going to win by 50 or whatever it is. And even if they lose to Georgia Tech next week or in 2 weeks, they'll still be in the playoffs. They'll drop. They'll probably play an away game, but their resume is strong enough. They have enough quality wins. Their losses will be quality as well, because clearly now we evaluate teams based on their losses more than their wins. Great job, CFB committee. Absolutely fucking genius system right there. But I think that Georgia's now, and you can't really argue it, that they're a top 4 team. They'll be in the top 12, win or lose, unless they manage to blow a game to Charlotte and Georgia Tech. God, if that happens, that would be absolutely insane. But Georgia looks like they are a top team. I personally think they're the only team out of the SEC that can win. And the reason I say that is because everyone else just looks shaky. We saw A&M falter like crazy against South Carolina. They ended up closing it out somehow. But I don't think they can do that. Or now that we know they can do that, I don't think they'll win. Oklahoma doesn't have an offense and a shaky defense. Alabama's too inconsistent. We saw too many flaws from them. They might not even make the playoffs. So I think that Georgia is your best bet coming out of the SEC. I think it's really between Georgia, Indiana, and Ohio State. Those are the only 3 teams that I think can win a national championship. I don't think Texas Tech is going to stack up well against these teams. I think we're going to look at that and be like, wow, they can beat BYU, but they can't beat a legit SEC team. So I think Georgia is your best bet out of the SEC, and I kind of like them. I think that they have a decent shot of winning. I like them more than Indiana, potentially more than Ohio State. I think that you'll probably see, you won't see that because if Georgia's 4 and Ohio State's 1, we'll see that in the semifinals. But I think that Georgia has the best shot of any team in the country of taking Ohio State right now. The next game we'll talk about is Notre Dame and Pitt. The one thing I'll say is I said it last time on the pod. I went on a rant about it. Narduzzi, are you happy? You got what you wanted. You got absolutely curb stomped. You're like, I don't care if they do this. Are you happy? That's all I can say. It seems like every year Notre Dame like falters for a few games, and they come into these games against like the teams ranked like 15 through 25, and we're like, huh, maybe Notre Dame will falter, or maybe one of these teams is legit, and it never seems to happen. We saw it twice last year with Army and Navy. Notre Dame killed both of them. I had to watch that one of those massacres in person. It was a great game. It was super cool to be at Yankee Stadium, but still a massacre. And we see that with USC where they take care of business. They got very lucky, but they take care of business. And we see that here where they absolutely curb stomp Pitt. I think it wasn't really a surprise to anyone. Pitt clearly is not on the same level as Notre Dame. And Notre Dame is probably in the upper echelon of the better teams, like the top 10 teams. They are definitely a very good team and are definitely one of the best 12. Do they deserve to be ranked where they are? Probably not. But they're on an 8-game winning streak. That's going to continue to 10 unless Syracuse or Stanford can help us out. Please, Fran Brown, begging you. Oh, wow. Move the mic a little bit there. We're going to have to adjust that. And it was like kind of, they just took control from the start. We saw a couple of inconsistencies. We saw them miss a field goal, and their kicker woes will continue. That's been a huge issue for them. They've had gone through 3 kickers in the last week, and Marcus Freeman was like, the biggest issue is that the ball didn't go through the uprights, and he's totally right. But they didn't really know what direction to go in. They got a new kicker. They went with one of these kickers, and he missed his first field goal. So disappointing on that end. But they kind of took over as soon as that happened. We saw Notre Dame. Jeremiah Love, he looks electric, by the way. He reminds me of Le'Veon Bell back in his Steeler days. Ironic that they were playing in Pittsburgh. His first touchdown, one play, 56 yards on that drive to the house, shows some patience, a couple nice hesitation moves, and he looks like he's in control. Jeremiah Love, we knew he was the best running back coming into the season. We didn't quite see it in the first couple of weeks when they played Miami and A&M. But boy, has he started to flourish. He had a great game against USC. Another great game now. It was 140 yards and a touchdown. Something insane. And then Mason Heinzel on Pitt didn't exactly help him out. The next play from scrimmage was a pick 6. That's not exactly what you want to see from your quarterback as soon as you go down a touchdown. And after that, the game kind of felt over. Pitt had their chances as well. They couldn't really put them away. We saw CJ Carr threw a pick in their own territory, and all Pitt could do was settle for a field goal. That's not what you need to do. And we saw them miss a field goal at the end of the half as well. And by that point, it's 21-3 at halftime. There was no doubt really in anyone's mind about which way the game was going to go. They felt in complete control throughout the entire way. And CJ Carr had a decent game. It was 3 touchdowns, 2 picks. He outplayed Mason Heinzel. He was not good at all when it's kind of the first time playing a real defense. I'm not counting FSU as a real defense. Sorry. He had, 130 yards and a pick, and even got replaced by Eli Holston when it came to garbage time, which I thought was a nice gesture by Narduzzi. Get your senior quarterback some playing time in a big game. He ended up throwing a touchdown at the end of the game to make the score 37-15. But yeah, I don't think this result was particularly surprising. I think it kind of solidifies the fact that Notre Dame, until a couple of teams in between Notre Dame and Miami, will be in the playoffs over them. They are 100% peaking at the right time. We saw that last year after the loss versus NIU. They went on a great run. Didn't really play any majorly tough opponents, but we see that here, that they just completely bounce back and they look like a good team. I don't think I don't think they deserve the current ranking that they have. They're definitely, which is weird to say, because college football is based off resumes and not play. So they definitely are a top 12 team, but they don't have a top 12 resume. Maybe not a top 12 resume, but maybe you'd flip some things around. Could they be ahead of Oregon? Potentially, I can hear you out on that. Should Miami be ahead of them? Yes. Should BYU be ahead of them? Yes. Because there's a bunch of factors that go into that, of the fact that they didn't lose. We can't compare losses. You have to compare your wins. The fact that it might be one of the most un-American things I've heard of, being who is the better loss instead of who is the better win. It's stupid, but they are playing a top 12 team, and I think that they'll probably be in the playoffs at this rate, unless there's a miracle with Syracuse or Stanford. Those are going to be the only 3 games that we'll talk about like in depth. We're going to just bounce around for a couple of other different headlines, different topics from the week. The ACC took another twist. Clemson breathing life back into the ACC race for a bunch of teams. They take out Louisville 20-19. Louisville picks up their third conference loss. And the key to this game was kicking. Louisville missed two of their last 3 drives. Their last drive was a turnover on downs, or as time expired, I forget which one. They missed 2 field goals, both of which within 50 yards, and you kind of hope that your kicker would make them, especially when you do have a solid kicker. They also missed an extra point. Not even blocked, just missed it. That's the reason the score was 2019 and not 2020, because they missed an extra point. Kicking woes are going to cost Louisville a chance to play for the ACC title and potentially get into the college football playoffs. Their lives were hanging on a thread coming into this game after a shock loss to Cal in overtime last week, and now we see their hopes are dead at this point. There's no hope for them. They have 3 losses. They're now like on par with teams like Wake, and I think Florida State has 3 losses as well. So, yeah, really no chance for them to bounce back and have a chance, which is really unfortunate because they were a super exciting team. They can't compete with the 1 and 2 loss teams remaining. We've got 6 of them, I believe. Pitt, UVA, Georgia Tech, SMU, Miami, and now Duke. Speaking of Duke ended the nightmare scenario with potentially not having the ACC get into the playoffs. We saw UVA pound them 34-17. UVA now looks like a shoo-in to play in Charlotte. They're one of 3 teams with just 1 loss. Pitt or Georgia Tech will pick up a second this week, and potentially if Pitt beats Georgia Tech and Miami beats Pitt, both of them will 2 losses. Georgia Tech will have an easy route in. All they have to do is just beat Virginia Tech, and they'll be fine. Well, also, SMU does have 1 loss again. I can't be mistaken there. So maybe not a shoo-in, but they look very, very comfortable with their chances to make the AC championship. They just can't lose to Virginia Tech. And Virginia Tech is very rejuvenated now at this point due to the hiring of James Franklin, which we will get into in a few minutes. But we'll see. I think more of a gut check we'll see is how they play against Miami. Because all of them are playing for their jobs now. They know that there's a new coach, new evaluation. Some of them are going to be told to transfer. So they're playing for their jobs against 2 top 15 teams in the country, and we're going to see how they do. So Virginia just can't lose to Virginia Tech. And yeah, Georgia Tech with a very interesting game. They were at one point were down 11 to BC. This is one of what I thought was going to be the easiest picks of the week of Georgia Tech covering 17 after we saw what SMU did to them. I couldn't have been more wrong, but I don't think you can blame me. They had to erase an 11-point deficit. They kicked a game-winning field goal to win 36-34 to beat now, I believe, a 1-9 or 1-10 BC. Really hanging on by a thread. That would have been a shock loss, and they pretty much clinched a spot. Actually, I can't say pretty much because Pitt is still a decent team. They do only have 1 loss in the ACC to North Carolina State. They will host Pitt in a huge, huge game. We can see Pitt potentially take a spot away from Georgia Tech if they end up winning the game. And that's going to be a huge game on Saturday, 7 o'clock. Prime time. Should be a fantastic watch. I think that is probably going to be the best game of the week, better than Oregon and USC. We saw Miami curb stomp NC State 41-7, a huge win for the Hurricanes. We saw them really bounce back their last 2 weeks of dominating performances. And they're showing that they are like bouncing back after these wins. We normally don't see them play well in November, but these last 2 games have been very, very strong. And Miami does sit for the most part of the outside looking in. And because I'm a Miami fan, and this is my episode, I'm going to push Miami propaganda down you. So we're going to run down the scenario of getting Miami into Charlotte to have a chance to play for the ACC championship. The first things that obviously need to happen are Miami winning out. They have to beat both Virginia Tech and Pitt. If that doesn't happen, then it's completely cooked. The next thing that is super vital, and we're going to see this week, is Pitt beating Georgia Tech. I don't think it's likely. I think Georgia Tech is probably going to win this game, but we'll see what Mason Heinzel can do, and hopefully they can bounce back. Definitely going to be rooting hard for Pitt to throw in some more parity here. The next thing we'll have is UVA beating Virginia Tech. Doesn't seem like a very difficult task. They'll be at home. Virginia Tech doesn't look particularly good. We'll see how Virginia Tech plays against Miami, but shouldn't be hard to see UVA take a win in the Commonwealth Cup. The next thing that for this week we'll see is Duke beating UNC. Again, shouldn't be hard. UNC doesn't really have a particularly strong home crowd. This isn't really a huge rivalry outside of basketball. I know, yes, you want to beat your rivals, but it doesn't carry the same weight at all, especially when both teams are mediocre and garbage. And then this week, the last game that's going to matter for this week is Louisville versus SMU. This game actually doesn't matter because no matter what happens, SMU just has to do the opposite of what they do this week. So if SMU wins, they need to lose versus Cal. If SMU loses, they need to beat Cal. And that honestly seems kind of reasonable if Louisville beats SMU and then Cal loses to SMU. Wow, bad voice crack there. That's almost everything. The last thing Miami needs to see is Wake Forest beat Duke on the last week of the season. That one seems pretty likely. Wake Forest is playing like a really good team. We finally see that Robbie Ashford is playing well. And I think that it's more likely than not that Wake will end up beating Duke, and we'll see that probably play out Miami's favor. They still have to watch this game at 7 o'clock this weekend. That's the most important game by far. Perhaps the most exciting news in the ACC is that James Franklin was hired by Virginia Tech, and I think this is all around a phenomenal hire. Virginia Tech, after Brent Pry, is looking for a new direction. They need someone to really build up the program because they admittedly don't have much talent on the team, and there's not a lot of excitement going on. James Franklin, on the other hand, is known for building up programs. We've seen him turn around Vandy in just a couple of years. We've seen him turn around in 2 years from taking Penn State from mediocrity to the Big Ten championship and a Rose Bowl appearance. So I think that James Franklin is the perfect man for this. He's instantly going to make Virginia Tech a contender. Actually, I'm going to take that back. Sorry, getting a little ahead of myself. They're not going to be an instant contender, and we can talk about why in a bit. But regardless, I think it's a perfect fit. Virginia Tech already pledged $229 million going into their athletics department. Facilities, players, it's going to be rocking in Lane Stadium in a couple years. And the reason I say a couple years is because next year their schedule is probably about the hardest that you could possibly imagine when it comes to an ACC schedule. They go at Clemson, at Miami, and host Pitt, UVA, Georgia Tech, and play a trap game at Cal. So there's a good chance that they could go 6-6 or even worse. They probably will because it's going to take time. But Franklin is okay with that because it's not meant for a short-term, like instant turnaround. They will be back, and whether it takes 2 or 3 years or it takes 4 or 5, they will be a difficult team to play against in the ACC. He's already attracting Penn State commits. There's already a couple 4-stars who are coming to this game against Miami. Hopefully they show up for them. Well, not in my case, but for Franklin's case, hopefully that Virginia Tech shows up. But it's a really, really exciting time in Blacksburg, and I think it's going to be a phenomenal result in Virginia Tech, and they should be back to where they belong, competing in the ACC, packed out Enter Sandman, and yeah. Some other games around the country. USC kept their playoff hopes alive after beating number 21 Iowa 26-21. Mekhi Lemon with another insane game. He looks like the Belindakoff favorite at this point. He had 10 catches for 153 yards and a touchdown. They take on Oregon next week in what's going to probably be the best game of the week as well. So College Game Day is going there for a second time. I don't love that. But anyway, still a great game that we're going to see. I think USC has a chance to knock out Oregon. Oregon has 2 losses and no big wins. They're probably going to be out. I can't see them getting in over a team like Utah, BYU, or Miami. And obviously USC will be in. Michigan also kept their playoff hopes alive. They beat Northwestern on a game-winning field goal. Daniel Zavada kicked a 31-yarder as time expired right into the heart of the Northwestern student section at Wrigley Field. Unfortunate. If you're a friend of the show, you probably won't like that. But, so yeah, Michigan keeps their hopes alive. They'll still have a chance to play for a chance at the playoffs against Ohio State. They win, they're definitely in. They'll be 10-2 with a win over the number 1 team in the country. Ohio State will probably drop out of the top 4 potentially. And Michigan will have a chance to play for the Big Ten championship against Indiana, which would be super exciting. Those teams haven't played this year, but I think it would be a great game. In the AAC, actually, we're going to talk about A&M first. So A&M had a crazy game against South Carolina at the weekend. They go down huge at halftime. Lenore Sellers looks like what he thought he would look like at the beginning of the season. A couple of touchdown passes, looks like a great runner as well. The score is 30-3 at halftime, and somehow A&M bounces back. Not a single fan left. I saw that. Props to the A&M fans. The 12th man is legit. Marcel Reed bounced back in a huge way. Casey Concepcion with another good game. A&M can battle through adversity, so they've been tested. I don't think they can fuck around like this when it comes to Texas or the not ACC, SEC championship or even the playoffs. So that's going to be a bit of a concern. But regardless, big win for A&M. They keep their perfect season alive. Now we'll talk about Navy and the AAC. Navy upset USF, and it's super frustrating because USF, it was so simple for them. Just win out and you're in. They seemed like the clear contender from the group of 5 to take the last playoff spot. They won't do that now. Byron Brown had 4 total touchdowns. Couldn't do enough. Didn't do well enough. The score, by the way, the score of this game was 41-38, so it was a huge shootout. Not typically what we see in Navy, but Blake Horvath and Braxton Woodson, the dual threat duo, both of them can pass and run, combined for over 400 yards and 3 touchdowns between the two of them. Now, this whole situation is super messy in the AAC. 4-way tie for first: ECU, Navy, Tulane, and North Texas. The only difficult game left will be Navy playing at Memphis on Thanksgiving, which will be super exciting. I think it's ridiculous that you're having midshipmen play on Thanksgiving. That just seems morally wrong. But regardless, they'll have a game on Thanksgiving. Typically, we should have a 4-way tie. I don't know the tiebreakers, but Tulane looks like they're in the driver's seat for that. If Tulane doesn't win it, I think you give it to JMU, the Sunbelt. They look like they're going to be primed to win it. Their only loss was to Louisville by 14 points, which is honestly a respectable enough loss, even though that Louisville now has 3 losses. But regardless, the group of 5 is super messy. I think this goes to show you that you should get rid of it. It's going to bug me that USF has a better chance of making it than all of these teams. Like Miami beat them by 35. Like, we're not hiding anything. Vanderbilt, USC, BYU, Texas, Miami. All these teams are way better than anyone from the group of 5, and it's ridiculous that they're going to get a spot. Honestly, if you want to make it like more parity, just be like the 4 best conferences or 5 best conferences or an independent. Have Notre Dame take the spot. It's unbelievable how this happens, but they're going to have to change it. We saw them alter the format last season from getting the 4 best buys, just the conference winners getting in, and we're going to have to see them change this again because it's just not good for the game. And speaking of Navy, after the upset win, Navy we spoke last week about how Army released their jersey for the Army-Navy game. Navy did the same this week. If anyone wants to guess what color it is, it's going to be a very difficult guess. Shocker, it's Navy. Who could have seen that one coming? I mean, unbelievable. Their jerseys nod to the USS Constitution, which is seen on their brown helmet. It also honors, like Army, the 250th anniversary of the construction of the United States Navy. Which is a similar theme. However, this jersey is white pants, brown helmet, Navy jersey. There's a white rope design and a red stripe on the shoulders. Cool backstory. This is an Oregon Ducks uniform. I hate to say it, and not the good kind. How on earth, they plan these jerseys 2 years in advance. How on earth are you going to come up with a jersey where the helmet, the pants, and the jersey are 3 different colors? Come on. And it's not like there's brown seen on the jersey. There's no brown on the pants. Like, it's just a mismatch. It's like someone's like, you spun a color wheel, and you're like, we're going to go with that one and that one and that one. Army wins the jersey matchup without a doubt in my mind. Army's going to lose by 30, but they're going to look damn good doing it. So I think that Navy's jerseys were kind of a flop, to be honest. But the game should be exciting, as it always is. So that's going to be all for talking about like the games itself. We're going to get into talk about last week's picks. Didn't do so well with them. And we're going to get into 3 picks for this week. LSU did not cover 6.5. They only beat Arkansas 23-22. So I kind of had too much faith in them there. Miami did cover 14.5. They won by 34 in a dominant showing against North Carolina State. Minnesota barely missed out on covering 25.5. They did have more points than a lot of people expected, but they did lose 42-13. I believe that's 29. UVA, this was my pick of the week. I was taking them outright. I was super confident in this one. They absolutely covered 6.5. Duke is not a good team. They won by 17, so that's a 24-point swing there. Georgia Tech, which I really thought was going to be strong, did not cover 16.5. They scraped by on a last-minute field goal, winning by 2. And Ole Miss missed covering 15.5. They only won by 10. So 9-12 on the picks so far on the show. not good at all, but hopefully we're going to bounce back with these 3 picks. Oh, where'd it go? Right here. Texas -9 against Arkansas. Even though Arkansas played LSU close, I think Texas needs to bounce back and show up in a major way to show up to the committee that they have a chance of that they can scrape by if the results go their way. So I think they'll do it at home. Wake Forest has covered, and I'm so sorry for this, 6 of their last 7 games, and I think that they're absolutely peaking at the right time. They're rolling. Ashford looks great, and they'll cover against 17 against Delaware. Shouldn't be an issue. And Oregon has faltered a couple times in the last week. I know I picked against them with Minnesota. Oregon actually covered, so it only makes you think it would make sense to take Oregon, but as a wise man once said, not so fast, sweetheart. Love you, Lee Corso. We're going to fade Oregon again and take USC plus 10.5. I really think this game is going to be close, and I think they have a good shot of potentially winning and upsetting at Autzen. That's all this for this week on this episode of the No Huddle podcast. We should have a great slate of college football games. See you next week, and go Deeks.